Hey guys, and welcome back to the Aether Hub. I'm Simon, bringing you more Magic the Gathering lore. Today we'll be looking deeper into the cards of Dominaria, our return to a plane so rich in story and flavor. Luckily, a lot of cards in this set tell the stories of this plane's, storied past, such as those on the uniquely designed sagas. In this video, we'll take a look at the saga of the First Eruption. This is an enchantment for 2 generic and a single red. When it comes into play, it gains a lore counter and deals 1 damage to each creature without flying. Remember, that includes your own. After your next draw step, it gains another counter and it adds double red. I guess they don't use the term mana pool anymore, but yeah, you can use it on whatever you want this turn. And finally, on your next draw step, it gains a 3rd and final lore counter, allowing you to sack a mountain and it dealing 3 damage to each creature. Afterwards, the enchantment is sacrificed. So let's take a second to examine the card first before we get into its story. The First Eruption is interesting, feeling to me more like an uncommon than a rare, although it is a pretty strong wipe effect for 3 mana and across 2 turns. People are gonna note that this hits your stuff too, which is fine because enraged decks are a thing, but still, 3 damage to your own stuff could mess you up regardless. It's hard to judge because your opponent knows that they're on a clock and can work around it. Adding 2 extra mana on turn 4 though is always nice to get something big out that won't die to this saga's final effect. But you be the judge on how viable this can be. I'll just talk about its story. So the tapestry that is this card describes the mythical origins of Shiv. Shiv on Dominaria is an island containing a majority of the plane's red mana. As such, its most dominant features are fire, fire, and more fire, all leading up to a massive volcano near its center. The inhabitants here have a rich mythos on how this land came to be, and that is the true saga of Shiv. The legend goes, Shiv itself hatched from an egg, a shell of stone around a yoke of flame, and basks in the heat of primordial Dominaria, shedding its scales with each new eruption. The inhabitants of Shiv were born from its elements. The Ghitu were born of the fire, the dragons of the air, and the Viashino of the earth. A great story. How much of it lies in fact is unknown, but we do know some information on this region to help expand upon the legend of its creation. So Shiv was indeed formed by volcanic activities which created the island. As a focal point of red mana on Dominaria, dragons and the lizard people Viashino were attracted to this inhospitable setting, along with the nomadic and shamanistic people known as the Ghitu. During the rise of the Thran Empire, this advanced and technological civilization used the tremendous heat and mana found on Shiv to their advantage, building an outpost on the island along with a mana rig. The mana rig, which still remains there to this day, was used by the Thran to make their power stones, just like the ones used by Urza and Mishra, which basically powered the Thran's entire world. The Thran actually enslaved the native goblins here to run the mana rig, but as the Thran would fade into history, the goblins have, unfortunately, or fortunately for some, forgotten how to forge the power stones. One of the most famous natives of Shiv is Jhoira, the long-lived artificer and now captain of the skyship Weatherlight. Close friend to Teferi and student of Urza, Jhoira cares deeply for her home and her people, the Ghitu. I mean, her card title even included the Ghitu. She wanted everyone to know just where she came from. Speaking of Urza, the existence of a mana rig on Shiv surely piqued his interest in the island. By striking deals with the intelligent and fiery Shivan Dragons, yes, the famous Shivan Dragons, Urza managed to form alliances between dragons, goblins, and Viashino. From there on, Shiv became Urza's workhorse, his war machine for his fight against the Phyrexians. Figuring out how the mana rig worked and teaching the goblins and Viashino how to use it, Shiv created numerous power stones for Urza's cause. As the Phyrexian invasion began, Jhoira went to Shiv's defense and used the mana rig as a weapon rather than a passive factory. This of course would damage the rig beyond repair, but it did help repel the Phyrexians. Of course, like much of Dominaria, Shiv's defenses just weren't enough, and it looked as if the Phyrexians would tear the volcano straight out of the island itself. Luckily, Teferi came back to help his dear friend in her time of need. Teferi, as he did with his own home, used his temporal magic to phase out a large chunk of Shiv, protecting it from the invading Phyrexians. Jhoira was also still in Shiv when this happened, protecting her in the process. Teferi eventually came back to put everything in its rightful place, including Shiv, and freeing Jhoira from her time prison. The land stayed safe from the Phyrexians, but it ran into trouble with some primeval dragons with the power of gods. Yeah, they were super dominant and corrupted by their power, but they too would eventually fall, thanks in part to Karn, who helped clear the corruption and eventually killed off the powerful dragons. And that, you guys, is a brief look at the history of Shiv, an island of fire surrounded by a sea of flame. While this video and the saga of the First Eruption gives us a look at Shiv, it's not nearly everything this land has to offer. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed the lore. Let me know what you think about Shiv and the First Eruption in the comment section below. If you liked the video, why don't you give it a quick thumbs up, subscribe, and of course share it across the multiverse. If you want to support Vorthos here on YouTube, consider joining the Vorthos army via our Patreon. Find that linked in the description below. As always guys, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time here on the Aether Hub.